Toronto history, from ancient roots to colonial beginnings. Toronto is the most populous city in Canada and the capital of Ontario. With nearly 3 million residents in the city itself and more than 6 million in the Greater Toronto Area, it stands as the fourth largest city in North America. Anchoring the Golden Horseshoe region along Lake Ontario, Toronto has grown into an international hub of business, finance, arts, sports, and culture. Today, it is celebrated as one of the most multicultural and cosmopolitan cities in the world. But Toronto's history stretches back long before the modern skyline. Early history of Toronto. The land where Toronto now stands has been significant for thousands of years. Archaeological evidence shows that Indigenous peoples lived and traveled through the area long before Europeans arrived. The site lay at the entrance of one of the oldest and most important routes to the northwest, used by the Huron, Iroquois, and Ojibwe nations. By the 1660s, the Iroquois had established two villages within present-day Toronto, Ganetsekweagan on the Rouge River and Tioyagan on the Humber River. However, by 1701, the Mississaugas displaced the Iroquois following the Beaver Wars, and the Iroquois returned to their homeland in what is now New York State. The arrival of Europeans. French traders built Fort Rouy in 1750 on what is now the exhibition grounds. However, they abandoned it less than a decade later during the 7 Years' War. After Britain defeated France and its Indigenous allies, the land became part of the British colony of Quebec in 1763. During the American Revolutionary War, waves of British settlers known as United Empire Loyalists fled north across Lake Ontario. To reward their loyalty, the Crown granted them land in what would become Upper Canada. In 1787, Lord Dorchester negotiated the Toronto Purchase with the Mississaugas of the New Credit First Nation. This agreement secured over 250,000 acres of land, laying the foundation for a new British settlement. The founding of York. In 1793, Governor John Graves Simcoe chose this site as the new capital of Upper Canada. He moved the capital from Newark, now Niagara-on-the-Lake, to York, naming it after Prince Frederick, Duke of York and Albany. Simcoe believed York's natural harbor, protected by a sandbar peninsula, made it less vulnerable to attack by the United States. A garrison was constructed at the harbor's entrance, while the first town settlement took shape near today's Parliament Street and Front Street in the Old Town District. This marked the true beginning of Toronto's transformation from a strategic Indigenous route to a colonial capital. Toronto history in the 19th century. The early 19th century was a dramatic and transformative time for Toronto. In 1813, during the War of 1812, the town of York was attacked in the Battle of York. United States forces captured the settlement, looted it, and set fire to the Parliament buildings during their 5-day occupation. Clergyman John Strachan negotiated the town's surrender, but the destruction left a deep mark. In retaliation, British forces later burned Washington, D.C., one of the most famous episodes of the war. Education soon became a cornerstone of the growing community. In 1827, King's College, later renamed the University of Toronto, was established, becoming the first institution of higher learning in Upper Canada. York officially became the City of Toronto on March 6, 1834, reclaiming its Indigenous name. Reformist leader William Lyon Mackenzie was elected as the city's first mayor. Just a few years later, Mackenzie led the failed Upper Canada Rebellion of 1837, a pivotal moment in Toronto history that highlighted growing tensions with the colonial government. Toronto's population in the 1830s was about 9,000 people, and it included both enslaved African Americans brought by Loyalists and free Black Loyalists who had been resettled by the Crown. By the mid-1830s, more refugee slaves from the United States also arrived, seeking freedom in Canada. Slavery was abolished across the British Empire in 1834, making Toronto a key refuge. Black residents became an important part of the city's early social fabric. One example being a popular eating house on Frederick and King Streets run by a Black entrepreneur named Bloxham. Immigration shaped Toronto throughout the 19th century. The Great Irish Famine brought a massive wave of Irish immigrants, who by 1851 formed the largest single ethnic group in the city. Many were Catholic, and their arrival transformed the city's cultural landscape. Smaller numbers of Protestant Irish from the north, along with English and Scottish settlers, also contributed to Toronto's identity. The Protestant Irish established the powerful Orange Order, which dominated the city's politics for nearly a century. From 1850 to 1950, almost every mayor of Toronto was a member of the order, giving the city the nickname the Belfast of Canada. Toronto even served briefly as the capital of the United Province of Canada, first from 1849 to 1851 after unrest in Montreal, and again from 1855 to 1859. After that, the capital shifted to Quebec and later permanently to Ottawa, where it remains today. By the end of the 19th century, Toronto had grown from a vulnerable frontier town into a thriving, immigrant-driven city, laying the foundation for the modern metropolis we know today. Toronto history in the 20th century. The 20th century brought both tragedy and transformation to Toronto. In 1904, the Great Toronto Fire swept through downtown, destroying more than 100 buildings. The blaze caused over $10 million in damage, equivalent to hundreds of millions today. Only one person, explosives expert John Croft, lost his life while working to clear the ruins, but the fire reshaped the city's downtown core. Toronto's population continued to diversify during this era. New immigrants arrived from across Europe, including Germans, Italians, French, Jews, Russians, Poles, and other Eastern Europeans. At the same time, Chinese immigrants entered the city from the west. Many of these newcomers initially lived in the Ward, a crowded district near Bay Street, an area that has since become the financial heart of Canada. As families gained stability and prosperity, they moved into new neighborhoods, creating successive waves of settlement across the city. By the 1920s, Toronto was still overshadowed by Montreal in size and economic influence, but its growth was undeniable. A turning point came in 1934 when the Toronto Stock Exchange surpassed Montreal's and became the largest in Canada, cementing Toronto's role as the country's financial capital. The post-World War II boom accelerated Toronto's expansion. Suburban development stretched far beyond the old city limits, and in 1954, Toronto and 12 surrounding municipalities were joined into a single regional government called Metropolitan Toronto. This new structure coordinated shared services such as highways, policing, water, and public transit, ensuring the region could grow efficiently. That same year, disaster struck once again. Hurricane Hazel battered the Toronto area with powerful winds and catastrophic flooding. The storm killed 81 people, left nearly 1,900 families homeless, and caused more than $25 million in damage. Despite the devastation, the tragedy led to stronger flood control measures and shaped the city's modern approach to urban planning. By the mid-20th century, Toronto was evolving from a provincial capital into a global city, defined by its resilience, diversity, and growing economic power. Toronto history, immigration, expansion, and the rise of the megacity. By the mid-20th century, Toronto was rapidly evolving into one of the most dynamic cities in North America. In 1967, Metropolitan Toronto underwent a restructuring. The 7 smallest municipalities were merged into larger ones, creating a 6-municipality region made up of the former city of Toronto along with East York, Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough, and York. Immigration fueled Toronto's explosive growth after World War II. Refugees from war-ravaged Europe arrived in large numbers, followed by Chinese workers and construction laborers from Italy and Portugal. Toronto's population passed 1 million in 1951, as suburbanization took off and doubled again to 2 million by 1971. The late 1960s brought a major turning point. Canada ended racially based immigration policies, and Toronto became a truly global destination for newcomers. By the 1980s, Toronto had surpassed Montreal as the largest city in Canada and its leading economic hub. Political uncertainty in Quebec, particularly around the sovereignty movement, prompted many corporations to relocate their headquarters from Montreal to Toronto and other Canadian cities, solidifying Toronto's role as the nation's financial powerhouse. A major change came on January 1, 1998, when Toronto was transformed into what many called the megacity. Instead of traditional annexations, the provincial government amalgamated the 6 municipalities of Metropolitan Toronto, East York, Etobicoke, North York, Scarborough, York, and the original city, into a single-tier city of Toronto. The move, driven by Ontario Premier Mike Harris's progressive conservative government, was promoted as a cost-saving measure. The proposal sparked fierce opposition. A 1997 referendum saw residents vote overwhelmingly against amalgamation, but because municipalities in Canada are governed by provincial authority, the results had no binding effect. The Harris government pushed the legislation through despite widespread protests and filibusters in the legislature. In the aftermath, North York's longtime mayor, Mel Lastman, became the first mayor of the new megacity and the 62nd mayor of Toronto overall. His tenure quickly made national headlines. In January 1999, after record-breaking blizzards buried Toronto under 118 centimeters of snow, Lastman famously called in the Canadian Army to help clear the streets. The decision drew ridicule from other parts of Canada but underscored the challenges of managing a rapidly growing urban center. By the end of the 20th century, Toronto had cemented its place not just as Ontario's capital, but as Canada's largest and most influential city. A diverse, global metropolis shaped by waves of immigration, political change, and bold urban transformations. Toronto history in the 21st century. The 21st century has brought both challenges and global recognition to Toronto. In 2003, the city became the center of a major SARS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, outbreak. Strict public health measures were required to stop the spread, but they temporarily slowed Toronto's economy and placed the city in the international spotlight. That same year, from August 14th to 17th, a massive power blackout struck southern Ontario and parts of the United States. In Toronto, millions were left without electricity, subway and streetcar services shut down, traffic lights failed, and hundreds of people were stranded in high-rise buildings. On March 6, 2009, Toronto celebrated its 175th anniversary as a city. Just a year later, in June 2010, it hosted the G20 Summit, the largest security operation in Canadian history. The event drew global attention but also widespread protests and riots, resulting in more than 1,000 arrests, the largest mass arrest in Canadian history. The following years tested Toronto's resilience once again. On July 8, 2013, severe thunderstorms caused flash flooding that knocked out power for nearly 500,000 people and dropped more rainfall in 5 hours than Hurricane Hazel had in 1954. Later that same year, from December 20th to 22nd, the city endured its worst ice storm on record, leaving over 300,000 residents without power or heat. Yet, Toronto also became a stage for celebration and global events. The city hosted World Pride in 2014, followed by the Pan and Parapan American Games in 2015, cementing its reputation as a diverse, international hub. Toronto's growth has been remarkable in the 21st century. A 2019 study by Toronto Metropolitan University, formerly Ryerson University, identified it as the fastest-growing city in North America, adding more than 77,000 people between mid-2017 and mid-2018. The metropolitan area as a whole added more than 125,000 new residents, largely due to international migration, reflecting Toronto's continued role as one of the world's most multicultural cities. The COVID-19 pandemic once again placed Toronto at the center of public health challenges, as it became one of Canada's main hotspots. Despite these difficulties, the city continues to look forward, with global sporting attention returning in 2026, when Toronto will serve as one of 16 host cities for the FIFA World Cup. Toronto's history in the 21st century demonstrates its resilience, diversity, and ever-growing importance on the global stage. If you've enjoyed this journey through Toronto history, make sure to subscribe to History Love, your go-to YouTube channel for exploring the fascinating stories of the past.